Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and deceased. It is I am Mighty Sophia. Here a little slightly kind of bit late to review for you guys the penultimate episode of the first season of Fear the Walking Dead, and we are breaking down Cobalt. So spoiler alert, before I dive into the mad thick of things, as I shall be bearing all in this review. And well, if you were wondering why I did not actually upload this video Sunday night when I watched the episode, it's because a very silly little copyright strike has been placed on my channel completely erroneously. I used no third-party content of any kind, so I'm trying to work it out, but basically my videos are going to be a little bit shorter until I can get full access to my account again, so life is just fabulous. But at any rate, I'm still here, channel's still here. You can check out my Twitter page to keep up to date with my life happenings and things. But anyways, we're talking Fear the Walking Dead today, right now, in this moment. So I am very much excited about the trajectory of the show at this point. I mean, there was a lot of beating around the bush at the very beginning of this show. The opening episode, to me personally, was not that noteworthy or captivating per se, but since then we have entered into some really fascinating really fascinating material with the military takeover and the establishment of the safe zone in Madison's neighborhood. We get to see a lot of interesting shifts take place, and we are certainly going into the madness for the finale episode this upcoming Sunday. Like I said, I was not sure initially if I was going to continue to keep up with the show after the pilot season, of course. This is the time to try things out, but I think I do want to stick with it. I do want to move forward, so I'll go ahead and do a little character by character analysis for you guys, so I'll kind of hop around throughout the plot, but we can do this thing. So, anyways, with Madison, she pretty much went into Disturbia last week as she let herself become immersed in the apocalyptic wasteland that is now the greater Los Angeles region. She comes face to grisly face with some of the walkers, or I don't really know what they're calling them yet. I haven't really paid attention to the terminology that's being used, but generally everybody seems really confused. So there's not really like zombies or walkers or nicknames going on. It's, are they actually human or not? Are they human or are they dancer? Are their signs vital? Anyway, enough of outdated killers references. We move right along. So Madison has entered a place of extreme desperation too, now that her son Nick has been apprehended by the government's hospital staff. And yeah, or at least the militarized government. We see that they have some sort of infrastructure for medical care, but we can only assume it's going to be a very, very bad thing, as they are forcefully removing people from their homes. They seem to be targeted for some kind of purpose, or perhaps on the grounds that they are not physically well enough to make it in this world, and maybe it's time to systematically and more or less humanely put these people down. I don't know. Or, well, I mean, we do get a little bit of insight into that this week, but at any rate, Madison is at a point where she's going to do whatever she possibly can to get her son back, and she does not believe that those who turn are merely sick. She believes that their humanity has been stripped from them. I mean, she's pretty much all on board with that train, whereas her boyfriend Travis is quite on the opposite end of the spectrum, which I think is going to create a really interesting source of tension between the two of them as time goes on. So anyways, Madison decides to stand quietly by while Daniel tortures Ophelia's military boyfriend for an extended amount of time. And ultimately through that, Daniel is able to gain insight into what the Cobalt Initiative actually is. And that is the process by which the military essentially abandons the people, moves on, takes the money and runs. Or well, and quite possibly along the way, exterminate or eradicate the life force of the people in their wake. So little bit disturbing stuff that we've got unfolding here, but it's fully what I expected to see in the show, and I'm really glad that we do get into this business, because it's not really stuff that we got to deal with in the original show, which makes Fear of the Walking Dead finally at last, I think, a nice companion piece to the mother show of The Walking Dead, which I'm very excited for too. So anyways, Daniel and Madison continue to be a couple of the most fascinating characters in my book, simply because not so simply, I mean, they're very interesting characters, and we see how they very quickly adapt to the crumbling world around them, whereas others are kind of finding different ways to emote, different ways to justify what's going on around them, and different ways to try to believe that maybe, just maybe, things are going to be okay. Cue, of course, Travis, who tries to take a more diplomatic approach to things when people are taken away from the community and they're not getting satisfactory answers from the military men who are supposed to be protecting them, and yet it seems that there's a lot of instability going on the inside. And so Travis gets to go on a bit of a ride along, because finally he's able to convince one of the douchey military dudes that he needs to go see what's going on with Griselda and Nick, and he's like, okay, I'll take you to the hospital, whatever. So that ends up leading to an experience where Travis realizes that no, he cannot shoot the dead because they have their name tags on still. And there was some walker zombie lady by the name of Kimberly, whose humanity he was not able to let go of enough. So we see that this guy's gonna have problems, and he has already had problems, but the pacifistic approach is quickly becoming a thing of, well, the past. And he's gotta move it or lose it, essentially, but probably that decisive moment is yet to come for him. And ultimately, he freaks out when he finds out what Daniel's been doing in the basement. A little bit of Breaking Bad style business there, but yeah, we see that Daniel's past really informs the man that he is becoming in the wake of this devastating pandemic. And that's really fascinating to see too, and how Griselda was actually aware of what he was doing during the war times, when he had to choose between being a victim of the war or being a torturer, and essentially that's what he chose, and that is what he is now choosing to get the information that he needs. And the calmness with which he does it is really quite fascinating, although we also get to see him emote a little bit as well, as he realizes that Ofelia can't truly handle this side of who he is, who he has to be, who he is capable of being. Now, meanwhile, Chris, Travis's son, and Alicia, whom there seems to be a bit of a romantic thing going on with, but then again, there was actually some weird, almost, I don't know if I was the only one picking up on this, but some kind of like romantic undertones of sorts, even between Nick and Alicia. Again, I don't know if that's me and if I'm totally crazy or not. But I sense a little subtext going on in the sort of bro-sis relationship almost, and now there's something going on with Alicia and Chris. They go off and bust into some nice mansion, get all dolled up, and break empty champagne bottles against the wall, and then essentially everything else along with that. And I didn't really know what to make of that whole montage, because it's kind of like, okay, you could actually use some of the materials here for survival purposes, but then again, I don't think that they fully want to grasp what's going on in the world yet either. The only way that they can make sense of this is by kind of creating their own chaos, almost to sort of out chaos the chaos that's going on around them. Chris, of course, lost his mother, Elizabeth, not lost her technically, but she's now in the medical ward performing surgeries and whatnot. And Alicia lost Nick, who God knows what's going to happen to him. Of course, we see that a guy by the name of Strand has his own purposes for Nick. And that, of course, leads me to what's going on at the hospital. The hospital is kind of this very polarized place where we see that bodies and beds and supplies, what little there are everywhere. And there's quite a bit of chaos at play here. But Elizabeth is doing her best to save lives and unfortunately is not able to intervene in time for Griselda, who has a little dance with the devil, and then she's right on her way out, and Elizabeth has to do the honors of taking the cattle gun and pop her in the noggin. So, I know that's very unceremonious, and I feel badly that that had to go down for Griselda, but it really seemed to kind of be the trajectory of things. And meanwhile, we see this smooth, talking, well-dressed man who's got lots of rings and jewels and pretty shiny things that he is pawning off to the guards at the facility. Tough to tell what his role is precisely, but, you know, he's a businessman, an entrepreneur of sorts, and he finally is able to acquire Nick for the purpose of escaping this place by the end, which is quite an interesting turn of events. Apparently, it is Nick's status as heroin addict that wins him that little internship with Mr. I knew what his name was, and I forgot. Strand, as it were. That's really funny because, I don't know, like a viral strand, you know, so that's an interesting nickname. But we'll see what's exactly going to come from that partnership, I do suppose. I mean, Nick has made a hell of a lot of interesting choices, many of them dumb, some of them actually pretty quick thinking and smart. So this could go in any number of directions for him. I do fear for Elizabeth because now she's kind of enmeshed in the system and she doesn't really have the opportunity to contact her family. A lot of strife, lots of insanity to come, and I think that this episode really served as kind of the tip of the iceberg in that respect. So I have a little timer here to make sure that I am on the clock, and I'm gonna check that. Yep, so I'm doing good time-wise, but yeah, so what did you guys think of this episode? I mean, what I really wanted from the show, of course, is to see all of these different power relationships and regimes and empires rise up in the midst of this apocalypse, because even though society as we know it, as they know it, has essentially fallen and it's on its way out, there is still, you know, this human nature piece and the desire to make order that makes this world so interesting. Is now that the infrastructure is completely broken, there's a new one that's underway, and it's very scary, and it pits the civilians against the military existing to protect the civilian population, arguably, and now things are slowly beginning to shift and turn, and we're going to see who's going to get the resources they need, who's going to make it out alive, who is going to be able to face these tragedies and to make enough room for the pain to continue on and survive. So that's the gist of my thoughts on this business. I'm very excited to watch and review the finale episode for you guys. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching. Love the crap out of you. Stay tuned for more news, especially on my Facebook and Twitter pages. Links in the description below. So thank you guys again. Anything I missed, bring it up in the comments. And as always, I will be back before you know it.